All right, welcome back to Life It with DVD. Thanks for being here. Today, I wanted to talk about the art of magnetic help and why chasing people never works. So, you've seen somebody struggling before. They're talking with you about something, venting maybe their frustration, and you have an answer. You have some ideas of things that could help them. Um, and you think that you could potentially just deliver this perfect piece of advice that could change everything for them, and then you give it to them and they just stare at you. It goes in one ear out the other, and just the advice falls flat. So they might get defensive, they might make excuses, or they just ignore you, right? It's an incredibly frustrating thing. But what if I told you that the desire to help is noble, but your method is pushing them away? What if the most powerful help that you can offer is to stop trying to help them and in the way that you're doing it now? So, why unsolicited advice usually fails, the psychology around it. So the brain of the person that you're trying to help might interpret the unsolicited advice as a form of criticism or control. It signals to them maybe that they're not capable or that they're doing it wrong, and then this can trigger defensiveness and not openness, which you know is ideally required in this sort of situation for some sort of change to happen. I saw the other day too that being able to be open and to allow your opinions to be changed is one of the highest forms of intelligence. Not IQ, not anything else around it, but just simple openness, being willing to change your point of view. And that certainly seems like it's something that's being lost nowadays, where instead of being open to, could I be wrong about this? It's more of a doubling down, tripling, quadrupling down on the same ideas that, repeatedly don't seem to work. Um, but without having the ability to look back and see what did somebody say in the past, and is the pattern that happening now the same as before, right? That led to the situation they're in, the failure, the whatever. So some people just look at it that they are just venting, right? They are just, you're talking to them, but they really aren't looking for help. They're just looking for some sort of emotional support. And while you can give that to them, there might be that, well, let's help you out of this, but it's just not well received. So another way people might interpret it is that it robs them of their agency. So overcoming struggle is how we build competence. So, you know, by swooping in with the answer for them, you might inadvertently disempower them, or you become part of that problem for them, not the solution. Right? So the core principle is that people support what they help create. The idea they discover for themselves, even if you guided them to it, is 100% more powerful than the idea handed to them. You're just on a silver platter. So these are more rational ways that people might consider your unsolicited advice. But I mean, going back to the other point where some people are just venting, right? Some people just don't have that openness to be able to consider alternative points of view. Um, you know, and because they don't understand where you're coming from or your approach, they might just stare through you because they don't want to feel like incompetent, right? That they don't know what you're talking about. So right, that leads to the blank face, or just the changing of subjects. Um, so the next part is, how you can get out of, this unsolicited advice to, something a little bit more powerful. So one way is the art of following, right? It's just getting out of their way, right? So the philosophy around this is, sometimes the greatest act of love for a person is to allow them to experience the natural consequences of their actions, as long as it's not putting their life in danger, right? So, you cannot walk someone's path for them, and they just need to learn lessons themselves. So, what this can look like is, the adult child, making a poor financial decision, instead of trying to tell them the error of their ways, or lecturing them or bailing them out. You can just calmly say, hey, I trust you can figure this out. I'm here if you want to talk through options, right? That shuts down the conversation, it shuts down the complaints. It preserves your energy if they're not receiving the advice that you have for them. And it can also communicates your faith in their resilience, whether they believe in themselves or not. So another example could be a friend that keeps dating the same type of toxic partner. Instead of listing their partner's flaws, you stop absorbing the drama. You say, it sounds like a tough situation, what do you think you'll do? And this forces them to confront their own patterns, their own situation, instead of actually just venting to you. It gets them out of that emotional monkey mind and into the, well, yeah, what am I going to do here? And then allows you to potentially interject some ideas that might help them. So, the outcome is that you stop being the player in the drama triangle, the victim, the persecutor, the rescuer, and you become a grounded observer that just is there to help. This often creates the void that they need to finally start helping themselves. So another approach you can go about this is just being your authentic self in their presence, the power of modeling. So this looks like you become a living example of the change that you wish to see. So your energy, your peace, your vibe, your results, create a state of being that, when around them, is potentially the most attractive form of advice for them. So, this can look like, if you have an anxious friend that is, just flipping out at something, instead of telling them, oh, go meditate, you prioritize your own peace, right? When you're with them, you genuinely are just calm and present. Your state becomes a silent invitation for them to be peaceful as well, instead of, just worrying about too much. You can also, maybe another example is you want your team at work to be a little bit more proactive on tasks or on projects, whatever. Instead of micromanaging, constantly checking in with them, you focus on your own work, your own excellence, the things that you can control. You take initiatives on them. You acknowledge your own mistakes, right? They will mirror this behavior far more likely then they'll just follow your own orders or presence, right? If you're hovering over them and constantly just micromanaging, it just kind of communicates an air of mistrust, and that can put people on edge in a negative state, as opposed to being that example. A family member, right? Another example is a family member that struggles with health, that complains about it a lot. Instead of nagging them about, oh, well, this is because of your diet, or, the doctor you're going to, you need to see a new one, right? You can enthusiastically share how good you feel about the healthy meal that you just cooked, and offer them a bite, or often, it doesn't even have to be, because they might see that as one-upping them or bettering them, but maybe looking at it like offering Hey, I feel pretty good right now with the things that I'm doing. Um, have you ever thought about trying it this way? And see what they say, see how they respond. They might overlook it, they might dismiss it, they might do the same things that they're willing to do. But you know, um, the outcome, right, emits a frequency of possibility if they're willing, right? People can get curious. They might start asking you questions about how you're doing what you're doing. Like, how do you remain so calm? Where'd you get that recipe? Now the advice is solicited, and you will be received more fully than just throwing it out there without kind of throwing in the checks to see if they are interested in the advice or the ideas. And ultimately, if they're not receptive to these things, right, you can change the subject. You can have a different conversation. Um, you could stay outright that it's like, oh, okay, good luck to you, right? Just end the conversation. Um, but ultimately, right, you want to put yourself in a situation to succeed, though. So, this starts with shifting your identity, so moving from a fixer to an example. Your job is not to manage others' outcomes, it's to master your own energy, control your own energy with discipline, right? You also need to master your own triggers here. So when you feel the urge to force help onto somebody because they keep complaining about it, ask yourself this: is this about their need or about my anxiety about their situation? Um, you know, Ultimately, this is about your own control. So you can also create an open invitation here. Make it known that you are available if they need help. I've always been through something similar, and I've learned a lot. If you ever want to talk shop, or my door is always open, sort of thing. Say it because you mean it, right? And don't bring it up again, right? Allow them to hear it, and just let it go, right? Detach from the outcome. Because this will then also protect your energy from them just constantly venting to you about things that they don't seem to want to fix. So in conclusion, right? You also this is also about cultivating a life with other people that you want to be around, that have good energy. Focused on building a life with purpose, peace, and joy. Fixing their issues instead of drowning in them. Right? A thriving, attractive person is a magnet. So you know people will be drawn to that, and a drained, frustrated person, or even somebody that's trying to help and isn't getting listened to, right, is not a helpful person. So in conclusion, be that magnet, not the chaser, right? The old paradigm is to help of help is chasing with a flashlight, blinding them, telling them where to go. The new paradigm is becoming a lighthouse, a stable, bright beacon on the shore if they want to look to you for guidance. You can stand firm in your own truth here, right, without, and allowing them their autonomy to do what they want. So your power lies not in the ability to persuade, but in the ability to embody, and let your life be your message. So, where in your life are you trying to help people and it's just not being received? What would it look like to either get out of their own way or simply focus on being your best self around them? And be interesting to hear in the comments. So if this reframe of trying to provide advice for people helps, just let me know in the comments. Like or subscribe if you enjoyed it, and let me know how you approach helping other people, especially if it's a sensitive situation or just people that don't want to hear it. Do you preserve your energy, or do you try to be a little bit more persistent with them? It'd be interesting to hear. So, all right, thanks for watching, and until next time, see ya.